My name's Kyle Rourke, and I was born here in Los Angeles, California, 1970. My dad's from Kansas City, Kansas, and my mom's from Kansas City, Missouri. My mother's an English teacher, so she has a bachelor's degree, and my dad's a mathematician, so he has a master's degree, and he was an aerospace engineer, and they both just retired. My mom's a Christian Scientist, so that's a Protestant religion that comes from Boston. It's a very small kind of a religious sect, and we grew up reading the King James Version of the Bible, so I grew up going to Sunday school every weekend with my brothers, and my dad is an agnostic and a scientist, so he never went to church with us, so it was just my mom and my two brothers. We weren't that religious. My mom's very religious, but I'd say my two brothers and I, we kind of rebelled against religion, and we just had a lot of questions that I don't think we found an answer to in the Bibles. We all liked some of the Bible stories. My older brother's a professor who's kind of a Marksist, so he's very left, so he's kind of rejected God. From what we learned in church, it was very different from what how school was. Like there was a lot of pressure, mostly just to be a good student, get good grades, and there was a lot of pressures growing up for going out and having fun, drinking, doing drugs and stuff like that. So I think the religious background for a lot of kids that I grew up, we just kind of didn't have the faith to stay on the right track. So most of my friends were agnostic, or nobody really talked about God. We just did what we wanted to do. A problem with a lot of people, younger people feel like there's a lot of hypocrisy in church. We watch on TV a lot, the religious leaders always getting in trouble for talking really good in sermons, but then they get arrested for a sin or something. So we saw that a lot on TV. So I think as a young kid that affected a lot of us in religion, where we just lost faith in a lot of the Christian leaders in this country. A problem with the Christian faith in America right now. While I was in high school, a friend of mine joined the Army in 1988, so I went and saw an Army recruiter and then also a United States Marine recruiter. So I decided to join the Marines in 1989, and I went down to San Diego in 1989, and when I got out, the Berlin Wall fell down, and the military invaded Panama. So while I was in my training, I watched all this, and right as I was a new Marine, the first Iraq War broke out with Kuwait, so that had a big effect on me. I was in Japan during the time, but almost everybody I knew went over and had to fight in Kuwait, and I was 20 years old and 21 during the war. I worked on artillery, so I shot cannons. We're right behind the infantry, so the Marines' job is to be the first to go into battle. So like if we land on a beach, we'll go from the ship. I was in Japan, Hawaii, and Kentucky. And in Kentucky, I was switched over into the Army, and I was in helicopter warfare. So I flew in helicopters and shot cannons again, firing like maybe 4 miles away. So you don't see the target. you load a big bomb in the cannon and you shoot it, kind of like a rocket. I was the second, like a sergeant, so I had one boss, and then I was in charge of 5 guys. Got in trouble drinking, and they sent me into a program, so I stopped drinking for most of the time into the military, and that was in 1990, and then I started back up in 1997, and I was under kind of a lot of stress with, I'd been married a couple times, and I ended up going back to drinking, and I lost my career in the military. I think it's kind of common for a lot of guys in the military. A lot of guys, when they go away, the girls get lonely and stuff, so it's a kind of a problem in the military. There's a lot of divorces in the United States military. You know, sometimes, a lot of times it's the guy's fault too, where he's making too much money and he's going out and having a girlfriend. I think that for a lot of people, you know, drinking in business it causes a lot of problems where they're not spending time with their family. People do a lot of dinner, drinking, go to the bar, and talk to people for business and stuff, but then it ends up being too much of a party and not business anymore. Some people, I do teach martial arts. I've studied martial arts for about 10 years, and I've studied Korean Hapkido. I have a black belt in Hapkido, and I've studied Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. That's more of like a wrestling, grappling martial art. And I've also studied Filipino martial arts, sticks and knives. So, one of my masters trained with Bruce Lee. His name's Danny Inosanto. The Machado brothers, I've studied with them, and they trained Chuck Norris, who's kind of a famous martial artist. He had a TV show, Texas Ranger. So I never really heard too much about Islam, except my mother said, you know, Islam's a religion that was spread by the sword, and kind of people became Muslim because they had a choice, either convert or die. But besides that, I had a pretty neutral, I didn't dislike Islam, or I didn't know any Muslims. I just saw, growing up, a lot of the stuff on TV about the problems in the Middle East, and some in the 1980s when I was a kid, it was pretty much the United States was having trouble with Shiite extremists. So that's my first real kind of education of Islam, but I didn't let that make me prejudiced. And then during the my time in the military, I met a couple Muslim people, and so I still had a positive experience. And what I'd always heard was that, like, when Osama bin Laden came around, he was an extremist, and so I remember I was in college during 9/11, and I kind of worried about some of my Muslim friends, so I ended up telling them if they ever were scared or if anybody gave them a hard time, just they could come talk to me. So I built a good relationship with some Muslim people, and they told me, you know, a lot of the problems in the United States is a bad, kind of the media distorts Islam. And this one guy from Saudi Arabia told me that in Saudi Arabia it's a crime to curse God and to curse Jesus Christ. And he said, I hear a lot of Christians use bad language towards their own God and towards Jesus. And I thought about that, and I didn't know that, you know, even Jesus was a highly regarded prophet. So that was a really one of my first things where I started looking into Islam. I had bought a Quran and I read it a few times, and I started looking into Islam, and I talked to a couple people and they gave me another Quran, and came down to this masjid 2 years ago, and a guy talked to me about Islam, said, I looked at my life and where I wanted to go, and Islam seemed to have a lot of the answers that I was looking for. I didn't really know too much, but I just had that feeling that this is something that I have to do. And I came to the masjid and told one of my friends, I want to become a Muslim, and he said, well, do you know all the things, the 5 pillars? And he went over them again, and I said, yes, I know, I've read them, I need to do this now. So it was Juma, so I came in for the Juma, and it was a really good Juma, and after Juma I ended up doing the Shahada, and in my mind I was the only Caucasian European brother in there, so I felt like, are these people gonna like me and accept me? But like I said, I just felt like it was something I had to do. Afterwards, the whole everybody came up and gave me a hug and made me feel very welcome, and I felt like a peace came onto my heart. And Islam is a way of life, like trying to, where, you know, everything's so specific. We do 5 prayers, and it's very different from the life that I'm used to living. My Christian faith didn't save me, and Islam made a lot more sense because I never believed in, like the Catholics believe in the Trinity, and that didn't make any sense to me. And there's a lot of appealing things about Islam. No drinking, you know, the 10 Commandments, basically the same. Don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal. You know, you're not living a material lifestyle. You're trying to think about what God wants you to do. The main thing is the Quran and the Sunnah, and that's what kind of unites the Muslims. But most of the brothers that I've met are very kind and helpful. I've gotten a negative attitude from almost everybody. So scholars came, an Islamic scholar came and gave a class on dawah, and he said right now there's a statistic that says 70% of Americans have a negative view of Islam because of the media. But I tried to say positive things about Islam and defend Muslims, or at least most of the things that they were saying just were not true. It was something that they'd read or a friend told them or they saw on TV. So I always tried to give a more positive view to my fellow Americans about my faith. I'm a Muslim, and my religion's a very beautiful religion and has changed my life. And that's why I'm studying with the Imam right now, so maybe I can help people to see Islam in a better light in this country. When I do my salat, I feel like I'm doing the right thing. As an exercise coach, it's like I'm exercising spiritually and also eating at the same time, like I'm getting my spiritual nutrition from Allah. And Islam's very simple. Just come here and talk to your Allah. Because, you know, I don't have to go to a priest, I don't have to go to a minister. You know, Allah knows my heart when I'm doing my salat. So, you know, I do feel a connection, and the masjid's become a very special place for me. Former Protestant, it makes a lot of sense because Islam's a great religion for kind of bringing everybody together because Muhammad's the last prophet. So I think Islam could unite a lot of people, and like it's the religion of peace. So that appeals to me. That I believe it's the religion that has the ability to give people what they're really looking for in life, not material things, because people have all this money and they're not happy. And then on the other hand, if you're a selfish person, you're not very nice. So if you have a lot of stuff, you could give it to somebody else and you'll feel better. So I think that a lot of things about life, Islam has the answer. And giving to the poor is, I think, one of the most beautiful things. We go out every Friday and we feed non-Muslims, even though they're not Muslims. We give give food to the homeless people, and whether they're Muslims or not, because they're human beings. In my growing up, we always just kind of focused on taking care of our little group and not just somebody because they're a human being. Discipline and kind of a community-based culture and a respect for elders, where, especially in America, we have more of an individual. My impression is, I think in America we don't know enough about other cultures, and sometimes, like if we go to a country, we're just so used to being Americans, we might not show a lot of respect to people, and then we love our freedom so much we want to tell everybody about freedom, and sometimes there's a lot of bad things about freedom. Some of the ways that I think have been the internet is really helping a lot, because it's kind of a non-threatening way where you can get the information without, especially here in America, we've felt like we've been preached to so much, and what we've been told isn't we end up seeing what people say is not really their actions. So I think the internet would be really helpful, because you can read the information, you can go to an Islamic website or Facebook, and you can hear the exact opposite than what you'll see on the TV news. Muslims could reach out more to, mostly in America, get to know more Americans. There's a lot of opportunity with especially the financial problems. People are questioning the material lifestyle, and there's a big opportunity to give people some faith. A lot of Americans have problems with eating too much food, drinking, not being happy, divorce. So, if somebody could come up with a good way to show a solution without feeling like the person's being judged, I think that's a great way to spread Islam, spreading it as an answer to problems. Well, brother said that how he was telling me how Islam got spread to Indonesia was the people were so impressed by the way that Muslims did business. They weren't cheated, and they were treated very kindly by the Muslims, and they were consistent. They were always, so it wasn't what they said, but it was the interaction and the kindness and the fairness in the way the Muslims did business, and the way they lived their life was appealing. So, a very knowledgeable person in Islam, and going out and talking to people, sharing the faith, but probably the most important is like doing the fair business and being honest. And I'd just like to thank them for like being the people that have kind of kept hold of the light for us here in America. So if it wasn't for all the people keeping the hold of their faith through the challenges, we wouldn't have the opportunity to become Muslims here in America. So I'd just like to inspire all the brothers and sisters in Turkey to think about us here in America and pray for us, and I hope that we can find more ways to communicate and to grow stronger together.